Bring back one of our favorites, Troy Aikman, joining us on behalf of his successful light beer, 8 Elite Light Lager, 100% organic grains, no cheap fillers, and only 90 calories, 2.6 grams of carbs. 8 truly light beer made right. Never settle for anything less. We bring in T. Roy Aikman, joining us on the program. How's the beer company going there, Troy?
It's doing well. Yeah, we're starting our third year. And a lot of good things. Yeah, we're expecting a big year, and you're right. Light beer made right. 100% organic grains, 2.6 carbs, 90 calories. And the best part is no added syrups or sugars. And it's really resonated. So it's doing really well. It's just in Texas, but we're launching. Can't announce exactly where we're going, but here in a few months, we're going just a little north of here. So
okay.
We're expanding a little bit, so that's good.
Maybe a place where you started your college football career?
Yes, possibly.
Okay.
Possibly could be.
Okay.
Sure.
But when you drank at halftime, when you were with the Cowboys, what did you normally drink?
I didn't drink 8. But yeah, it was a competitor of ours now.
Did anybody?
I worked at a brewery in Tulsa before when I transferred from Oklahoma to UCLA. I worked at a distributorship up that way, and that was my first introduction into the beer industry.
Wait, did you just show up and get a paycheck, or did you?
No.
Like, was this name, image, and likeness before NIL?
Yeah. Unfortunately, people ask me how much I got to go to Oklahoma or UCLA, or I wasn't really highly sought after, so I didn't get any of those types of perks. I put in the work, And that's who the beer's made for, Dan, so it's all good.
If you were going to give Brock Purdy advice this week, what would you tell him?
The advice that I got before my first Super Bowl was really just to be as prepared mentally as you possibly could be so that you could just go play. And, the advice that a lot of people give is, hey, treat it like any other game. It's not like any other game, and anyone who suggests that it is hasn't played in the Super Bowl. You don't arrive a week early for any other game, and obviously the attention. But for him, trying to keep the week as normal as possible, and that's hard to do. But my guess is that's his approach every week, and he'll be able to get it done. But, Dan, the thing that I'm always most interested in seeing, Patrick Mahomes has been in these games, so he won't be as affected as much. But someone like Brock Purdy who hasn't, how do they handle the ball early in the game? What do you see from them? What's their demeanor? Is the moment too big for them? But I'm looking forward to seeing how he handles it.
But what kind of distractions did you have with your first Super Bowl off the field?
I was really fortunate in that our first Super Bowl was at the Rose Bowl. We practiced at UCLA, where I had just finished my college career 4 years earlier. We had the equipment guys who helped our staff from my college days that were around. So a lot of the support people there at our practices and in the locker room were people that I was familiar with. So everything for me was very comfortable, which definitely helped. And then we dressed in the locker room where I played my college games as well, and then of course at the Rose Bowl. So there was not any distractions to speak of for me. And I thought that Jimmy Johnson, he was always really good. During the week on Wednesday, he'd come in and he'd give a speech to the team. And it wasn't always the same speech. It really was dialed into whatever team it was that we were playing that week. But the week of that first Super Bowl in the 92 season, I thought Jimmy was as good as he had ever been in his messaging to the team, because we were the youngest team in football. And he prepared us really well, I thought.
How often would you show up at practice and somebody would say, oh, did you hear what happened with one of your teammates?
Well, it didn't happen a lot when Jimmy was our head coach, but when Jimmy decided to go to South Florida, there were a few of those mornings where you came in and said, "No, you got to be kidding."
So it was a little looser under Barry Switzer than Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, a little looser. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, but you never got in trouble.
I missed curfew under Chan Gailey in training camp. I guess that's about as much trouble
Wow,
as I
man.
I had an interest in a woman, and I went on to marry her. And I just felt it was one of those moments where you got to make a decision, Dan. And I decided that I was going to miss curfew and ride this thing out. And the security guard, unfortunately, I thought he was a friend, but he turned me in.
He
So
ratted you out.
he ratted me out. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have tipped him. You should have, greased the palm there a little bit there. We're talking to Troy Aikman, joining us on behalf of his successful light beer. It's 8 Elite Lager. Chiefs defense doesn't get enough credit, I guess, because if you have Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor Swift and everything that goes along with that. But what would concern you if you were playing that defense this weekend?
Well, I just think that what Steve Spagnuolo does is so good. The different looks that he gives, the blitzes that he has. He's been doing it a long time. I totally agree with you. I think that it happens. It happened with our teams that when you have a really good offense, the defense tends to get overlooked. It happened with San Francisco and the runs that they had. This Kansas City defense is really good. So it's not one of those situations where it's all on Patrick Mahomes, and it hasn't been. I mean, this defense has done a good job throughout the year. So I think the challenge is being able to pick up the different looks that they give, and that's not an easy task.
Brock Purdy is going to face that defense. Where do you see where you would take advantage of, and can Brock Purdy do the same thing?
Well, I love everything about San Francisco. I think in a time when you're not able to practice the way that you once were able to, and yet this is a team that is extremely physical on both sides of the ball, and how they accomplish that. It hasn't mattered who their defensive coordinator is or the coaches that they've lost on the offensive side of the ball. They play a style that I love to see, and then the scheme in which they run. It reminds me a lot of the teams that I was a part of. I think he's the best head coach in football. I mean, I think he's the best offensive guy in football right now. And the way they tie it all together has allowed Brock, you still have to make those throws. So I'm not in the camp of saying that Brock is a game manager at all. But with the running game and then the play action game and the way that they go through the progressions, it takes away a lot of, I guess, the challenging aspects of playing against a defense like this, because you're going through your reads and you get the ball to the guy who's open, which sounds simple, but you just don't have to read it out quite like you do in some other offenses.
Can you say this on the record that Kansas City is now America's team?
I don't know that I can say that with my allegiance to the Cowboys, but they've certainly captured the country, and with Taylor Swift and the army of fans that she's brought to the sport has been fantastic, and they're one of those teams now, like we saw from New England for several years. We were a part of that, the Steelers, the 49ers, that they're to be reckoned with each and every year. What they've accomplished even up to this point is really impressive. So
nobody embraced the Patriots. All that success, they weren't America's team, whereas the Niners had their run, the Packers had their run, the Steelers had their run, the Cowboys had their run, and fan bases were built off of that. I don't know if America ever embraced the Patriots.
Why do you say that?
Because I think in New England they did. Are you?
Well, if you're a Patriots fan, you embrace them. Just like, I guess, if you're a Chiefs fan, you embrace the Chiefs. And then you bring some people in. I mean, I would imagine that they cultivated, the Patriots, that they cultivated some fans by the fact that they were winning. In my childhood, I always rooted for the winners. So, people say, who was your team? And I said, well, whoever was winning at the time was my team. I had a lot of teams over the years. So.
You're like kids nowadays. They do that. They just like players, maybe not a team. What would elevate Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady's level in your mind?
Oh, Dan, for me, it's championships. I mean, it sounds self-serving when I say that because I was able to win 3, but at the end of the day, the reason that he's getting paid $50 million a year is to win championships. It's why all quarterbacks are. It's why they were drafted where they were drafted. And Tom understood that better than anyone. He sacrificed a lot in order to win championships. So I don't like the conversation to say, well, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, I just don't know how you can say that at this stage of his career. He's certainly on pace.
But he hasn't even surpassed you, Troy.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, that's a good point. So,
I mean, you do have 3, and he's got 2. So for
there's a reason why I like coming on your show, Dan. So, but no, I think in order to say that with Tom, I think you've got to win 7 or you've got to win 8. I do think that's the measuring stick, and it's hard to imagine that anyone. There was a time when I didn't think anybody could beat Joe Montana or Terry Bradshaw and win 5, and then he's gone on and won 7. So I guess that's the bar.
Also, I don't know if you were criticized, but you had all these weapons, and I don't know if people said, well, just don't screw up or anybody can win. Like Terry Bradshaw, he was criticized by, people
Right.
said, well, you should win. You're, the quarterback of the Steelers. But Brock Purdy is getting this criticism. How much criticism did you get winning Super Bowls where they were like, well, just hand it to Emmett and occasionally throw it to Mike?
Yeah, the people that say that make it sound like playing the position is easy, and it's anything but. I never concern myself with any of that. But I will say this: that for those that talk about Brock Purdy as, hey, he's a product of the system, he's a game manager. I have yet, maybe you have, I haven't. I've yet to hear a quarterback say that, because I think the quarterbacks understand that when you say game manager, then you fail to appreciate the 3rd and 12 throw that he converted between 2 defenders for a first down that allowed Christian McCaffrey then to score from the 5-yard line. Those are the things that tend to get lost. So Joe Montana had great players around him. I had great players around me. Bradshaw has great players around him. You can't win in this game unless you have good players around you. And then along with what you said a moment ago about having a good defense. So all of that goes hand in hand. But, anyone who criticizes me or thinks, hey, all he had to do was this or that, I've never lost any sleep over. I don't care. I mean, it just it's not been relevant to me.
Yeah, and we get caught up in that game manager. I'm thinking maybe if we change it to game commander or game CEO, I think the word manager is the problem. Like, the word meatloaf doesn't sound good, but if we change it to Meat Mountain, then it would sound tasty. So
Well,
I
I
think
love meatloaf, so with that, I'm okay with meatloaf.
okay. Are you
But I
okay
hear
with game manager?
Well, it's better than what Parcells used to say. He used to just call him a bus driver. So, I mean,
Poor Phil Simms.
yeah.
Poor Phil Simms. Yeah. Hey, good luck. Always great to talk to you. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you, Dan. Have a great week.
T. Roy Aikman joining us on behalf of his beer company, 8 Elite Light Lager, headed to Oklahoma, perhaps.